Thank you all for coming today, especially since RPS canceled school. And welcome to the annual BMES/IEEE Science Talk and Warren Miller Movie Night. We're all so excited to have you here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kate Fernandez, and I am the BMES/IEEE student president, and also a graduate student here at Mayo Clinic. I'm also a 2017 Mayo High School graduate, so it's great to be back. Yeah, thank you, Mayo student. It's great to be back here in Rochester doing events like this for you guys, for the community that I grew up in. I'd like to introduce Dr. Amin Issa, who flew out all the way from Seattle just to be with us here tonight. Amin was also a student here at Mayo Clinic Graduate School and graduated in 2010 under Dr. Gary Seek. He then completed a fellowship under Dr. Bruce Johnson in the Extreme Physiology Lab and later founded the company Mobalytics. Welcome, Dr. Amin Issa.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate, for that introduction. Yeah. Yes, I left Rochester in 2015, so it's very nice to be back, very interesting. And I'm not used to the cold anymore, but thank you all for showing up. And let me just make sure my talk is showing up too. Oh. How do we? I think I can close this, right?
I have to escape.
Just need to go to Google. Can we stop the Zoom share? Or just don't need it because it's getting away with the top five. Oh, there you go.
So then,
Yeah, just
stuff on the book.
up here and hit present.
Okay.
So then let's just wait.
Can we get rid of the Google bar or what?
Okay, let me just make sure that. Okay.
Perfect. So my only goal here is to keep you entertained until the movie starts. Hopefully you learn something from my entertainment, but so before we start though, and I start to tell you a little bit more about what I do and some stuff, I'd love to ask y'all a few questions. So I'm really curious, how many people in the audience have played any of the Mario games? Just raise your hand. Parents, kids, everyone. Okay, cool. Don't be shy. How many of you played Zelda games? Okay. How many have played Final Fantasy games? Okay. What about Warcraft games? Oh, okay, some. And League of Legends. All right. Minecraft. Ah, look at that. All right. I'm definitely a generation up. All right, Fortnite. Okay, there we go. Cool. All wonderful games. And this full disclaimer, I played way too much games at your age. I play way too much games now, but I want to tell you about games and what they're good for. So let's start a little bit at the beginning. I'm just going to share a little bit about myself now that you shared something about you. And I'm going to tell you about how it all started. When I was 5, my dad got us a Nintendo for Christmas. It's a blocky box that you probably won't see today. And most people look at their phones today, but it was our first video game console. And my father is a professor of civil engineering. He has a PhD in civil engineering, and he took our studies very seriously. And the only way we could get a chance to play Nintendo was A, if we got all A's, and B, if we finished our homework first, and C, if we set up in a way that we finished all the extracurricular activities that he gave us. So he used to make us play educational math games, go to, physical activity, basketball, whatever. If we did all of that, we could play. And so he was very smart. And he had one other rule. He said that I don't buy you new games until you finish the game you first bought. And so today, maybe that's a little bit of a foreign concept with the way games work. But back then, games were really hard, and you would just buy most of your games for $30, $50, and you would play. And this is an old Ninja Turtles game back in the day. And this is one of the first games we got. And I got stuck for a really long time on this jump. This is what I looked like. And it looks impossible to do because you just press the button and you jump. But you have to press the button in a way where you lightly tap it and you hover to the right and jump. It took me many, many months to get past that, but I never beat the game. And my father made me record an entire play session of 6 hours, because back then, if you turned off the machine, the game didn't save. And then we proved to him, hey, look, we finally beat the game. So can we get a new one? And he said, okay, we didn't beat the game. He said, look, I'll get you a new one. It's been 6 months. And he went and he got us a new game. We finished in 3 days, got us another game. We finished in a week, and he realized it was a very bad deal for him. So he made a limit of, I won't get you a new game until 1 month passes or you beat the game, whichever comes last. So that taught us to like basically really finish games. And back then games were really difficult. So it was a very nice experience. One of the other things that was going on back then that really influenced how I thought, how many people know who this is in the audience? Okay, wow, that's a lot less than I thought. Okay, then Michael Jordan is probably the greatest basketball player of all time. We can debate it all day. You guys can tell me no, but I think he still is the greatest of all time. And I remember watching my first game of Michael Jordan play, and I was blown away. And I was so fascinated by what made these players really great. And so that started my journey of trying to understand how I could be great at something, and then how other people were really great. So I would read books about Jordan. I would watch everything. And the problem was that I was pushed by my parents through school, and I graduated high school at 14. So I was looking at people when we were playing sports who had beards and were 1.5 feet taller than me, and I couldn't compete because I was young and I hadn't gone through puberty yet. So I turned my attention to games like StarCraft, which were very mentally demanding and very challenging. It's where you have to manage resources and you have to control your army and try and maneuver and really get in front of people and think strategically. And I became really good at those games. And I really tried to understand how to be the best at them. And so I got really, really good at them. And suddenly high school finished, and my parents looked at me, and for any of you that come from a traditional family, this is the rules. You either become a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or you disgrace the family. I think Arabs are not the only people like that. I know from my fiance, but I told my dad I want to be a doctor because I want to help people. And he said, okay. So I went into college and I played a lot of Warcraft in college, and I ended up going to med school after that. And I realized med school wasn't for me. And that's when I met, I don't know how many of you know, this is Dr. Gary Seek, who used to be the head of the BME program here. And when I applied to Mayo, I came out here to interview with him, and he was very clever. He set things up to be in the summer. And so the weather was great, and he was very charismatic. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was going into a PhD program. I didn't know you had to pick a thesis and research. Mayo is very different from most schools. You have to go to a lab first, be part of that lab, and then you pick kind of a project, then you become a PhD. Here, they're really nice. They let you come in, you do some rotations, you figure out what you like, what part of science you really like, and then you can pick that, but after you've joined the program. So what did I study? I honestly had no idea what I was getting into, and I moved somewhere really cold, and I had plenty of time. I found myself playing a lot of Warcraft. And so I like to joke and say I got a PhD in World of Warcraft. I actually played so much World of Warcraft as a fierce orc warrior that you saw in that previous picture that I won several tournaments and I got sponsored. So yes, back in the early 2000s, they would pay me to fly out and play in tournaments, and then I would get a prize pool. Here, we're the group on the left. I'm the person next to the blonde guy in the top left, and we won 6,000, which is nothing compared to what players win today. Players who win the Dota International, their team wins $30–40 million. So it's an industry that's really grown over the last 20 years. But back then we played in empty warehouses. Nobody cared. Nobody could watch because we didn't have streams like today, like Twitch. Only the people there could watch. How many of you watch Twitch? Wow. Okay, not enough. All right. Okay, so Twitch is basically a platform where you stream yourself playing video games to other people. So you can go on there, you can watch people play Minecraft, Fortnite, whatever. It's like, how many watch YouTube? Way more. Okay, it's like YouTube, but it's live. And I know YouTube has a live component, but Twitch is just live. So played in a lot of tournaments, and somehow I had two very patient mentors. I talked about Dr. Carlos Mantilla, who also headed the program for a while. And they worked with me with their patients, and Dr. Mantilla was the patient one. Dr. Seek was the more hard-edged one. And basically, I finally graduated. I focused on studying spinal cord injury and introducing a new trophic factor. So basically what that means is that we would intentionally injure rat spinal cords, and then we would introduce a chemical, which is called a trophic factor, that we'd see if it made them grow back faster. So I used a lot of microscope work, and to be honest, I learned at the end that it was not really my thing. And so I wandered. This is one of my favorite quotes, Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. If you've seen Lord of the Rings, I hope you have it. If you haven't, please encourage your parents to watch it with you. But he says, not all who wander are lost. And so I was wandering and trying to understand what I do. And if you notice at the start, I said that, you only have 4 choices when you're young, growing up in a traditional family. And I feel there's a lot more than 4 choices in life. And I was trying to figure those out. And so during that time, I met my next mentor, Dr. Johnson, and he looked at me and he asked me, what am I going to do with my life now that I finished my PhD? I told him, I don't know. I was thinking of, taking a break and going back home and maybe working on a friend's farm. I really didn't know. He said, why don't you do a postdoc with me? And I said, I don't know. I don't know if I want to keep doing this. He said, look, we climb mountains, we do cool things, and sometimes we do a little science. And he walked away. And I said, oh, okay, that was kind of cool. Let me give it a shot. And I did. And we ended up doing a lot of cool projects. One of the projects we worked on was we worked with F-22 fighter pilots in the Air Force. And what we would do is we were trying to understand when you fly up, how many of you have ridden on a plane? All right, cool. When you go up in a plane, the only reason you can breathe normally at that high is because the cabin is pressurized. So here, when you're at sea level, there's a certain amount of pressure and a certain amount of oxygen that you'll breathe at. But the higher you go, the less that gets because of the way the pressure changes. These pilots fly up, the takeoff that takes you like 10 minutes takes them maybe 1 minute. And so they're experiencing a lot of pressure changes. And what we were trying to understand is why these pilots were getting what's called hypoxia, which means not enough oxygen. So we built basically a cognitive test, and we would outfit the pilots with a bunch of sensors and try and understand in the lab, like, hey, what happens when you're not getting enough oxygen? How do we detect that? And how do you play a game when that happens? The other cool project we worked on is I was lucky enough to climb Everest, a big part of a big Mayo Clinic expedition. And we did kind of a similar thing there. You're also going up in altitude. We're trying to measure altitude sickness, the effect of lack of oxygen, the effect on sleep. So we would literally go into the tent at night, and we'd be wearing all sorts of sensors and freezing, and we take those vitals, pull the machine off in the morning. How many of you left your phone outside? You notice that the battery dies like instantly because it's so cold. And so we had a lot of logistical challenges like that because there's no electricity up there. There's no heat. So we had to keep everything warm. So we would sleep with our devices to make sure that we could record and measure things. A lot of our work looked like this. We sit in the lab, we outfit people with many different sensors. We track their eye movements, their heart rate, their breathing rate, their oxygen saturation, and we have them do tasks. Sometimes it's while exercising, sometimes it's while emulating an altitude chamber. And we try and stress their body as much as possible, even to the point of some of these people almost passing out. Obviously, it's all IRB safe and approved, and we do it on ourselves first. But the idea is to stress the body and understand what happens in the body and how that affects their decision-making and their task output. Again, after my time with Dr. Johnson's lab, 5 years, which I'm very grateful for all my time at Mayo, I felt like I didn't have what I wanted. I needed to see other places, learn about other things. And so I started to wander again. I took kind of a sabbatical, and I would take a lot of the techniques that we used in the lab to measure fighter pilots, to measure mountain climbers, and I would do them on gamers, being a big gamer and being that part of my background. And I would go to professional players and test them. And then using those tests and a lot of the material from what I had learned from playing the games and being good at them, we built what we call a performance index. And if you look at this performance index, we're measuring players on 8 critical skills. And so those skills are depending on the game you play. So if you were talking about Fortnite, we measure you on your aim, your ability to acquire new weapons and gear efficiently, your ability to hide, your ability to stay alive, lots of those different things. And we give players scores, we assess them, and then we can give them advice. And this was a project that I started with a person that I met during my wandering. What ended up happening is, unbeknown to me, he entered us into a pitch competition. So pitch competition is where you go and you talk about what you want to do in front of people and judges. And if you've seen Shark Tank, it's very similar to Shark Tank, basically. And then they say, hey, look, we think it's a good idea. We think this is what's good about it, what's bad about it. And we ended up winning the whole competition. And all of a sudden, we received the ability to really build the things that we wanted to build, the research that we wanted to do. So we got a lot of investor money, and we started to build. And our mission was to help all gamers achieve their full potential while maximizing enjoyment of their favorite games. And you know, being a gamer, that was very, very important to me in doing this. And I realized there's hundreds of millions of people like me who are playing every day. And everybody wants to be great and win. And even if they don't want to win, or they want to enjoy the most out of their game, do things well, talk to their friends about what they did well. Nobody wants to feel like they can't do it, right? And so people, what they do, how many of you watch YouTube videos to play Fortnite better or Minecraft better? Well, okay. There you go. So it's kind of, a lot of people are reading on how to do anything better on YouTube, and gaming is just one of them, right? And so we wanted to, instead of you having to go search for that stuff, we wanted to take all your information and all your data and be able to tell you what's good for you, what's bad for you, without you having to search for it. And so what does that look like? This all-in-one companion that we wanted to build would be personalized, take all that information, and no matter what your skill level, if you're good at games, if you're bad, we'll tailor that to you and be able to deliver that information. The way we do that is before the game, during the game, after the game, and in between games, we deliver exactly the information you need. So let's say, I'm not going to use a game example because not everyone's playing the same. So we'll use a sports example. Everyone knows how basketball works. So say you were going to a basketball game. Before the game, we tell you number 23 on the other team, they love to do a crossover and they love to go left. And we know that you're weak on your left side. So we want you to pay attention to that. During the game, we're kind of like a coach. Every time something happens, we blip you and say, hey, that you should have done this, should have done that. After the game, we tell you, here's all the things you did well. Here's all the things you did poorly. Here's some extra work you can do so you can get better. And then in between games, we tell you like, look, you know that about all the players in the NBA today are starting to shoot from the 3-point way out more. You got to develop that skill or else you'll be left out, right? Or you have to figure out a way to be more relevant. So our idea is to take that information and to feed it to you only in a way that it's relevant to you. So you don't have to search everything for it, but we give you exactly what you need because we've analyzed how you play. So I can talk for hours about where I've been and what I've done, and I can talk for hours about games and science. So let's start talking about games and science. That's why we're all here. So today I want to cover 3 things. The first thing I want to cover is why games are actually like science. The second thing I want to cover is why games can be good for you. And the third thing I want to cover is why games can be bad for you. As a scientist, you can't be biased. So most important thing is to look why something's good, why something's bad, and evaluate and make a good decision based on that. And I think that's a great skill to have in life and not just in science. So games are math. Really simple. Every game is math. And so if you like math, you'll be good at games. And if you like games, you should be good at math. So you get better at the games. If you think about it, every time you hit someone in a game, every time you jump, the computer has to figure out how high you're going to jump. There's a formula in the game's code. And every time a bullet hits someone or you swing a sword, the computer has to figure out how much damage the person takes. How much more can they take? So everything is deconstructed into math and equations. And the more you understand that math, the better you get at the game. Also, you can subconsciously learn all that math just by playing. Pretty soon you figure out that it takes you 2 shots in the chest and one in the head to defeat an opponent, or it takes you 3 swings of an axe in Minecraft to get more resources on a specific node, but 5 on another. But the game is doing all those calculations and it's just math. Oftentimes, the way you grow your character in a game, like World of Warcraft or Minecraft or Diablo or any of these games, is you get gear that gives you specific statistics. So you have like, if any of you have played like, or are familiar with D&D, you have like different attributes like strength, agility, how much health you have, how much mana you have. And all the time, what you're trying to do is make your character better, see the numbers go up, but also you're trying to figure out what's good for my character. Do I want a character that's really smart and can cast spells? Do I want a character that's really strong and can be on the front lines? Do I want a character that's very fast? And you have to figure out what you need to do to get the best version of your character. So that involves a lot of math, a lot of planning, a lot of work. There are very complex games that have how many of you have seen a skill tree in any game you've played where you pick skills and do stuff, right? They can get really complicated, right? And so there's a lot of math that goes into putting points into your skill tree and trying to understand, hey, so you have to research, think about your build, and then say, I think this is going to be the best build. And then you're going to go and you're going to test that, right? And so games are very, very, very good representation of the scientific method. You make an observation, you ask a question, you research your build, you formulate a hypothesis, you say, this build is going to be the best build because I get to max out these points and I'll cast 3 times as fast and I'll get all of these bonuses. And then you go and you test and you experiment, and you analyze that data and you report the conclusions to yourself, to your friends. But the nice thing about games today, if you want, you can ask any of the grad students here, if you want to test a hypothesis, it takes you maybe years. You have to get resources, you have to get money, you have to set it up, you have to get approvals, and they spend 6 years, 5 years to research that. In a game, you get feedback instantly. You go out, you test a build, you start to see if it works or not. You play against other players, you start to see if your strategy is better than theirs. You get that feedback instantly and you can adjust it. Games don't lie. The truth is always there. It's just math. So either you made the right choice or you didn't, and the result will be there. Your character died. You lost that scene. You missed that power up. You'll see it based on the choices and the strategy you made, and you can adjust and make a new hypothesis. Games are also like science. When you think about performance, a person playing a game often in a very serious way thinks that they're in a life or death situation. And they're very immersed. I think parents, anytime you want to pull your kid off a game, I'm sure you've seen this. Wait, no, not now, right? I know my parents had trouble. I don't know why eating dinner was so important and I was in the middle of the game I was playing, but one does not simply pause an online game. It was not something my mom understood. But basically, a pilot is in a life or death situation, and they are essentially playing a game. They look at their visual in the cockpit. They have a bunch of different information systems giving them information. They're listening, right? And they're trying to execute specific maneuvers with the controls. If you think about a gamer, they do the same thing. They sit in a chair. They have a lot of visual displays. And you know, how many of you sit down and talk with your friends while playing on Xbox? You talk to your friends, you get the information. You do the same thing and you have to act with the joystick. So you have to make decisions really quickly. And the better players are really good at processing all that information and acting and making the right decisions. I have a little video here. Let's hope that it works. I'm just going to show you a small part. But if you've ever, how many of you ever watched an esports competition with some players? And how many of you have been like, I'm nowhere near as good as that person, right? Right? It's just like basketball, just like anything, players can get so good. And I just want to show, for those of you who've never played a game, you can just try and take this analogy and think about a sport that you like or any activity that you watch someone that's really good at. And let's try and take that same thing and think about how they move so fast. So let's go to minute 25. I'm going to show you a series of events from a game called League of Legends. So League of Legends is a 5-on-5 game. 5 players, 5 other players. They're all on voice comms. And they're all trying to win. And so basically, you're going to see one specific player is going to move about really fast, and the announcers are going to kind of go a little bit wild. So they're trying, don't worry about what they're trying to do. Just watch. Okay, so I play this game very well, and I cannot even tell you what happened there. It all happens extremely fast. League of Legends is watched by more people than watch the Super Bowl. The World Finals constantly bring over hundreds of millions of people watching. So it's very popular to watch this 5-on-5 game. It's extremely chaotic. Things move really fast, and players need to make decisions and act really fast. So what goes on behind all of that? There we go. Let's look at a more simple example. I don't know how many of you are old enough to drive yet, but when you are and when you will be, what ends up happening is when you start to drive, at the beginning, you start to learn to drive, and then you don't think about driving too much. You're paying attention, but you don't think about what you're going to do too much. It starts to become subconscious. You can probably think about other things in your life that are very subconscious, but your subconscious brain does 90% of the work. The conscious brain helps you learn, but when you're actually doing a lot of motor tasks, a lot of things, you're relying on your subconscious. If players in a basketball game, in a video game, have to think about everything they do before they do it, they are way too slow. You will lose every time. So the subconscious brain is processing so many different inputs, visual, audio, to make those correct decisions and execute the actions. And it's really, really fascinating. And one of the ways we study this is something called eye tracking. So eye tracking allows us to see where players are looking on the screen at any time. And I consider it a gateway into a player's brain. So when you look at where someone is looking, you know what they're doing. And I think they use this eye tracking in research a lot for advertising, for example, when they're trying to make a movie or trying to make an ad, they try and see where people are looking so they can attract their attention to specific places. How does eye tracking work? It's actually really cool. Eye tracking, basically you have a eye tracking camera and it shoots out what is called kind of a infrared light pattern. And that will detect where your eye is looking and then send that signal back. And basically, based on that, the algorithms that the engineers have created inside this camera will position the gaze and tell this is where this person was looking on the screen. It's very fascinating technology that lets us understand what people are thinking about. And if you go YouTube funny eye tracking stuff, you'll see a lot of really cool videos. I really encourage doing it when you go home. So that's a lot about performance science, game science, and why games are like science. Let's talk a little bit about why games are good for you. All right. So one of the most important things that games offer is a really safe, comfortable environment to learn in. And you do a whole lot of learning really fast. And why does that happen? There's a few reasons. One, when someone plays a game, nobody's forcing them to play a game. I think oftentimes when we're in school, we feel forced to study math or forced to study history. And sometimes we feel like our parents will be upset. But when we're playing a game, we just keep playing. And, we're worried about our parents telling us to stop, not to force us to play. And so what happens is actually while you're playing, you're learning the game, you're learning the mechanics, and you're in a very safe environment so that you can fail. Oftentimes when we're in school or in life, we're worried about if we fail, then we're not going to, something bad might happen. The teacher might fail us. I won't get into college I want to get into. I won't be able to go here. Mom might get mad. So you don't have that ability. But when you're in a safe environment and you feel like you can fail, you learn really, really, really quickly. And often you learn a lot of stuff while playing. So one of the things you learn while playing, especially if you're able to work with a team to get to a goal and to win, is teamwork and communication. And that's something that will serve you anywhere in your life, whether that's at work, whether that's when you're playing. You'll learn it in sports too, whether that's at school when you're trying to talk to people and make friends. But teamwork and communication are essential in everything you'll do in life. And it's a very valuable skill to take away when you play games. Games like World of Warcraft, you may have to communicate with 40 people at once to conquer big challenges like defeating a giant dragon. and getting the loot. So it's really, really a powerful skill you learn from playing games. The other skills that you learn depends on the games you like to play. I don't know how many of you play any sort of card games, Pokemon card game, anything like that. But when you play a card game, you have to understand, why is this card good? Why is this card bad? When can I use this card? What does it combine with? It trains your valuation. When you play a game like Call of Duty or a shooting game, you're trying to understand where's the good place to stand? Where should I wait for my opponents? Where should I sit? So you try and understand positioning and strategy. When you play a game like I want to give an example of a game that lets you basically learn how to build stuff and plan. Game like Minecraft, if you want to build your base, you have to set that up. You have to think about it ahead of time. But you learn a lot of skills, and one of the things that people fail to make the connection is all of these skills are transferable to whatever you decide to do with your life. There's so many things that you can learn that have served me and other people very well in the workplace. Some of the smartest people that I've ever met, they play a lot of games for fun. And some of the smartest people I've ever met don't play games, but everyone plays some kind of game, whether that's cards, whether that's the stock market, whether that's their research, whether that's whatever. People play all sorts of games. So those skills are transferable. And finally, they give you a lot of confidence. You know, for myself and many others, when we were young, I wasn't good at sports. There was a lot of things I wasn't good at. I wasn't good with girls. And so I played a lot of games, and I got good at games, and they gave me confidence to talk to other people who played games. And so it was very, very valuable. The third thing that I want to talk about is why games can be bad for you. So we talked about why they're good, what they're like science, but games can be bad for you for many reasons. One is a lot of times when you're playing a game, you're not doing physical activity. You're sitting in front of a monitor or TV on the couch, and you're hunched over if you're on a computer, and you have bad posture, and you're hurting yourself. So if you play games a lot, then you're likely to be susceptible to bad posture. You're going to have back pain later on. You're going to have maybe carpal tunnel. Your wrists will start to hurt if you use a mouse a lot. It's not just games. Any of you who use your phones all the time will also have the same things. You're going to have a bad neck by the time you're 30. I guarantee it. You're going to have. So it's very important for us to think about how much we use electronic devices and how much time we spend on the screen. But the thing about games is it's so easy to keep spending time on the screen, not unlike TikTok or YouTube or whatever, but games are also an active participant, not just a consumer. So that brings me to the second thing that's bad about games. Games are very addictive. And today they're even more addictive than in my day. 20 years ago, you went to the store, you bought a game, $50, that was it. The company made their money. They don't need you anymore. Today, companies make their money off forever games. They have models that are designed so that you keep playing the game. They have hooks. They have like daily rewards, weekly rewards. They force you to log into their games every day, every week, so that you can get more and more stuff so that you can keep up. These are very dangerous. If you're playing a game just to get those rewards, you're already hooked. There's a lot of countries that have outlawed some of these things like loot boxes, but I strongly encourage every time you play a game, ask yourself, why? Is it still fun? Or are you just trying to get the rewards? I also encourage parents to be careful of these things, especially if they're set up in the credit card location and they can easily press a button to buy a loot box. The last thing that I want to talk about in games is oftentimes people playing games have a tendency to be toxic. It's a big problem. And it usually happens because we all get competitive and fired up in games. And I think we've all done it, and then just started to maybe get mad at a teammate or get mad at a friend and maybe yell at a stranger we've never met. And it's so easy to yell at a stranger you never met. And games, because they're online and you're not sitting next to that person, people have a tendency to be meaner because that person's not going, you're not going to see their reaction. You're not going to see how you hurt them. You're just going to see, you're just mad and you just want to say something. So I encourage you, when you're in an online community, to behave just like you would to people in real life. Be nice. You never know. Someone might suck at a game, but maybe this is the one place they come to play. It's a big problem, and major game companies are working really hard to eliminate toxicity, but it starts with the players themselves. So these are things that I think, we need to be careful about when we think about playing games and what can be dangerous. So I'm going to leave you with a conclusion. Hopefully I kept you entertained, but games changed my life. I grew up and I didn't have many friends, so I played a lot of games. And I met some of the most amazing people in my life playing these games. When we would get together, 40 people, 20 people, 10 people, 5 people to accomplish a goal, it was a very beautiful thing. And I could play with people all over the world. I could do it from my home here in Minnesota at the time, or when it was in Lebanon where I grew up. And so it was really, really important and powerful to me. And so I encourage you, if you play games and you love them, that's a really good thing. Share why with the people close to you. I'm sure they'll listen. In this day and age, we're bombarded with so many things, from TikTok to YouTube, all forms of social, all forms of entertainment and distractions. The nice thing about games is that you're not just a passive bystander. You're not comparing yourself to other people who are on this platform. What you're doing is you're actively working to build the characters and the experiences that you want to have with other people. So make sure you share that and you talk to people who ask you about your games, or who, especially your parents, and parents vice versa. I think it's very hard. In my day, my parents never touched games, and they still don't. My mom always asked me, when are you going to go back to being a real doctor? And I say, maybe sometime in the future. But, you know, I think my kids and you guys growing up now, it's impossible not to play games. Our society is filled with them. So I think ignoring being interested in it is very difficult during child development. So there's a lot of good that can come from it if you take an interest. And that's basically my message. I hope you find the same love and can get the great things that I got from games. So thank you for listening, and I hope you all enjoyed. I'd love to have questions, and if people have anything they'd like to talk about. Any questions? Yes. Yeah. Oh, so it's very smart. I do the same thing. I put a video up so I can watch while I'm playing. And I think that, you know, it's become more and more common, and we have a lot of information. And I think it's very smart to do two things at once. Just be careful that you don't do too many things, and you can't focus on the one thing. Sometimes it's good to turn it off. Yes, ask. Yeah, okay. Well, we'll take one more question. Yeah.
It's only like 7:13.
So we have more time?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So yes. Oh, that's a good question. I have so many. I don't know. You know what? I started playing World of Warcraft 20 years ago, and I still play till today, on and off. Obviously, I didn't play all those 20 years, but my recent favorite is the new God of War game that came out. It's very beautiful. Oh, we have some fans here. Very nice. Very beautiful story. It's a good parent-child story too in there. Very beautiful. You know, I like RPG games like Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, games that tell a story that move the heart. What's your favorite game? You don't know? Okay, maybe you could tell me after. In the back, we have the hand. I'm going to go from the farthest back. I'll get to the front too, just because it's easier. Yeah. Yeah, so we have time. I can just show you our platform, actually. Let's just go. So we made an app. Someone used it on this computer. That's pretty cool, actually. So basically, we're a gaming companion. Right now, we serve 5 games: League of Legends, Teamfight Tactics, Legend of Runeterra, Valorant, Lost Ark. We have an app. This is just the web browser, but we have an app that runs while you play and starts to help you. Like, if you've played League of Legends, it makes your build for you. It's an overlay. It says, hey, it's the 5th minute in the game. This is what you need to do right now. You can like even record your highlights. So the game will automatically record your highlights. Like, let's say you got a sweet move. It'll record it, it'll send it to you, it'll send it to your friends, it'll tell you what you did well, tell you what you did poorly. We have basically ways that you can take a look and see, okay. We have to, I'm not logged in here, but basically, if I give me 1 second and I will log in. So, where's the login on the web? Yep, there it is. Yep. Give me 1 sec. I have to remember. One more try. If it doesn't go well, then we're just gonna have to go without it. Okay, I'll show you a different part that doesn't need a login. So one of the things we do is we create guides for people. Have you ever used the game guide? You, the person who asked the question? So basically you can go in and you can see like, hey, I want to play a Soul Fist, and then you click on it and we'll show you what the best way to play the Soul Fist is. You can pick, you can see, and then once we know you play that, we watch how you play and we tell you, hey, you're doing this well, you're doing this poorly, change this, this will make you stronger, this will make you weaker, right? And so we kind of analyze the player's performance and whatnot. Sorry, I should be logged in. I'm logged in on my computer, but we're not set up with my computer, so I didn't take that into account. But we do stuff like, you ever seen a tier list? Like this is S tier, this is A tier, these are the strongest characters in the game. We help you pick a character based on your play style. So if you like to play more support, we tell you to play support. Like to play more this, we tell you to play that. And so that's kind of what we do. We do a bunch of number crunching so you don't have to. Okay, cool. Next question. I saw there was one. Those two right after each other. Let's start with red and then green.
What kind of games do you like have like the analytics for? Or whatever?
Yeah, so we have, right now we have 5 games. Our 6th should come out at the end of the year or early next year. But basically we have 5. League of Legends, Teamfight Tactics. League of Legends is a 5-on-5 MOBA. Teamfight Tactics is a strategy game where you pick your guys, you put them on a board. Legend of Runeterra is a card game. Valorant is a shooting game, if you've played Valorant. And then Lost Ark is an RPG game. So we have all different types of games, and now we're going to make more in each type of game. What game do you play?
Brawl Stars.
Brawl Stars. Okay, so cool. Brawl Stars is a lot like League of Legends, actually. So very similar. So we do something like Brawl Stars. Very cool. It's a fun game. Very nice. Next question. Yes.
Hi, slightly more serious question.
Sure.
I am a surgeon and I'm very fascinated with the concept of your platform, which is to give feedback and
Yeah.
make people better at what they do. How simple would it be to transfer the similar science onto something like teaching people how to do surgeries?
Yeah. I was under the impression that's something that's already happening quite frequently, right? I think Nintendo even made like a surgery game like 10, 15 years ago. So, and I think even maybe in Japan, they do that kind of pre-screening with games for surgeons. But I mean, it makes complete sense. I think the hard part for surgery is the haptic feedback, right? And getting that right when you're doing a specific operation. So it's hard to virtually train that. But I think as VR and force feedback and all that stuff become better, it becomes really much easier to simulate that and give people a place to fail, because it's really hard to learn surgery because you can't fail and you guys use dummies and all sorts of stuff. But I think that kind of stuff, and then you can measure the outputs really easily in a situation like that. Basically, you're always 5 centimeters off when you need to go on the left. So I think it's very doable. I just think that the hardest part is creating that feeling that you're one-to-oneing so that when a person goes into the real place, they're not thrown off, and being able to set that up. But I would be surprised if there aren't startups or companies that are looking at that. I don't know. But I think a lot of surgery now is done with robotic assistant like Leonardo machines and things like that, which is, from my understanding, also like almost like playing a game, right? Yeah. Do you use a machine in your surgery?
I use fluoroscopy, so it's slightly different.
Okay.
But one of the constant shortcomings of surgical training these days is not enough time for trainees to fail.
Yeah,
well, time, and they just cannot fail because somebody else pays the price for their failure.
yeah.
So having a safe place for them to fail is definitely something
Yeah.
we need in our profession.
I believe it's one of the best applications easily. They use it for fighter pilots, right? I don't see
Yes.
why they can't use it for surgeons. There should be something more robust. Yes, yeah.
As an aside, before I get to my question, did you guys support Vainglory when it was around?
Oh, I remember Vainglory. Oh,
Right.
that was a long time ago. No, we did not.
Okay,
League is wrong.
with different tier list then, but for some reason the name stood out to me and I thought I knew before I knew. Yeah, great game.
Yeah.
Aside from personal accountability, which is obviously where it all starts, where do you think the onus falls on reining in the toxicity and
Yeah, that's a good question. I was recently at a hockey game with a friend of mine who's also really, he's a head engineer for a gaming company. We were talking like, when I started to play in 2005 professionally, there was this big boom. And it kind of felt like it plateaued off at the 2000, like a lot of investor money went in around 2015 when we got funded. And we haven't seen kind of the same thing as normal sports. People don't go to the game. Teams aren't able to make money, monetize merchandise. There's no strong community feeling. And he's like, this is gamers are toxic. That was our discussion. And honestly, it's, I think personal accountability is one, but I think the way that in Asian countries they handle it is every time you play a multiplayer game, you have a real ID attached. And so if you have poor behavior, you get banned. Like in Korea, your social security number is linked to your game account. And so if you bot, if you cheat, if you hack, if you're toxic, you get banned. And so although they do see toxicity, they see far less than in Western countries where it's more. So that's one way to combat it. But the other way is a person that I know started a company called GG Well Played. They are using AI to decode chat logs, find out who are toxic people, and to automatically kind of bring them out and to send them to more selected groups so that they can reform, right? So it's kind of like catching people in the early days, you know? So it doesn't have to be something so bad that they get banned for, but you can start just like everything, like good medicine, you want to catch someone before they're at the bad point. So catching things early. But I think it kind of starts with people realizing that being online is just like being in person, and just, you know, feel free to let your guard down, but also don't bully online, right?
Right.
I think it's not a problem just in gaming. I know young people get bullied on social platforms like Instagram, especially young girls get bullied a lot on those platforms. So I think it's just the nature of the world we've created with internet and online and the platforms on there.
I think the platforms are just as responsible as developers, or is it more, again, trying to take personal accountability out because it all comes back to that.
Yeah.
But so far as enforcing or policing that, you know, I don't see the US going to the same measures we're saying the Asian countries did, where social security is tied to it. Hardware bans is pretty much the biggest hammer that we have.
Yeah.
But I feel like the platforms maybe has just as much an opportunity, talking about Twitch, YouTube, whatever else comes up, as the developers do. But I think developers have the opportunity to kind of control what they can allow their players to do.
I think they have a social responsibility to do that. And I think that some of them are stepping up to that challenge. Riot has a lot of people working on toxicity and player improvement and player reform, but a lot of them don't, right? I think notoriously, it's a difficult problem to solve. Like we opened like a section for user created content guides. Let anyone write a guide. We gave them the tools. People start posting pics that they shouldn't post, or right. So it's a difficult problem to solve. And I feel like sometimes the bigger platforms turn a blind eye for monetary gain. So it's definitely something that all of us need to, and especially the big platforms need to do.
So we have time for 2 more questions. There's a
Okay.
guy who's sitting in like first seated rows, and the guy who also has his hand up in front of him.
Okay, can you call them? I don't, you know which one?
So I saw someone who had his hand raised in kind of like that seated area. Yes.
Yeah,
you-
you-
I saw
yes,
your hand
yes,
up. Yeah.
Yeah. How, sorry? Oh, me. How old do you think I am? Just take a guess. You won't insult me. Don't worry.
30 23.
36, I heard you, 53, okay. The closest person gets a prize.
23.
23, 32.
24.
I'm gonna go with a 36. I'm 38, so that's the closest. So I think it was there that said it, so, okay. Why did you ask? Why'd you ask? Yep. Fortnite will still be around in 20 years. And we can have a conversation. Yeah, okay, next question. I think the blue jacket. Yeah.
I was just gonna say that I guessed 39.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, I think we had one more person who wanted to ask a question, but you got 39, so you were closer. You're right. Yeah,
Yeah, you in the front row, sorry.
How were you able to consistently contain a, for lack of a better term, work-life balance between your health and being able to enjoy the games you love?
yeah. Sometimes there is no balance. And you have to learn that it's okay if some days you stay up way too late playing a game. It's okay some days if you're way too into something, because not every day is going to be perfect. But the important thing is that you realize that that day wasn't a good day and you can't do that again. And so it's just like when people go out and have a really good time at night or something like that. Sometimes you step outside the bounds, and the best way to have balance is to constantly bring yourself back and realize, okay, I shouldn't have done that. Today's a new day, and you keep your things in order. I got to do something physical. I have to eat well, and I have to do this stuff. So for me, if I lost at a game, I would do push-ups or pull-ups every time my character did. So I kind of set up these systems for myself that let me stay physically active. Also, I would, when a new game came out, I would allow myself to get into the game, play more than I should for about a week. And then I would work more than I should for a week, right? So in those 2 weeks, I was balanced, but in the week itself, I was not balanced. I think everyone's different and everyone needs to kind of find the way for them. But the important thing is to remember that you have to sleep well, you have to eat well, and you have to do different things, because if you don't have that balance, other parts of your life will suffer. So honestly, what we tell professional players, because we do a lot of work with professional players, is exercise will help you more than playing another game and practicing. And so we make them go exercise, we make them meditate. I recommend yoga. I've done yoga for almost 20 years now. So I recommend some form of mental practice like meditation, yoga, and exercise. Exercise is, I was in an exercise physiology lab, and it's the fountain of youth. So do not skip on exercise and being healthy. It's probably the most, you can never get your health back. So.
Okay, last question, there's the nominee.
Yes, last question from you.
The
Oh,
second
there's
row.
more? Okay,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
So how do you decide which games to build an app upon, like based on some algorithm, like most popular games?
Oh.
How the selection?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's an investor question. So basically, it's a combination of things. One, it's the type of game. As you can imagine, some games are really simple and casual, and so there's not much for us to help players with.
That's a good
So we
feature.
tend to tackle more complex games where players have to make decisions, and it's difficult. They have a steep learning. Like games of League of Legends are so complicated that you can take the same game at the same point in time with the same characters, and there'll still be a billion branching paths on what will happen. Two is we take the larger games so that more people are playing them. We have more of a player base, and we can serve more customers and help more people. Three, we think about the community. How many people are creating content? How many are on YouTube? How can we help that community? Four, if we like to play it, it's important because we can't make stuff for things we don't like to play. Yeah, so that's, and five is like, is it new? Is it exciting? Can we build something for it? Do we have something that we've built for it before that we can adapt? We ask questions like that. So it's a combination of those different things. Do players need what we're going to build? We'll give them something that they're willing to use and maybe even potentially pay for.